Scattered across our planet are monuments and mysteries that have defied explanation for thousands of years. From the sands of Egypt to the depths of the Grand Canyon, ancient enigmas whisper to us across the centuries. 6 ancient mysteries, each one a puzzle that has challenged historians, archaeologists, and scientists for decades. Some may be hoaxes, others may hold fragments of truth. All of them reveal something about our hunger to understand the past. Today, we journey through 6 of history's most baffling ancient mysteries. From a hidden Egyptian citadel in America to a lost library that held the knowledge of the ancient world. We start deep in the Grand Canyon, where a 1909 newspaper article made a stunning claim. Explorers had allegedly found a vast underground citadel with Egyptian artifacts and mummies inside the canyon walls. Then we'll stand before the Great Pyramid, a structure so precise it aligns to true north within a fraction of a degree. We'll investigate the Sphinx, which some geologists believe may be thousands of years older than the textbooks say. And we'll uncover the tragic fate of the Library of Alexandria, the real city of Atlantis, and the Labyrinth of the Minotaur. These are the 6 ancient mysteries that science still cannot fully explain. Let's begin. On April 5, 1909, an anonymous front-page story appeared in the Arizona Gazette that would baffle researchers for over a century. The article described a Smithsonian-funded expedition that had discovered a vast underground citadel within the Grand Canyon. An explorer named G.E. Kincaid, traveling alone in a wooden boat down the Colorado River, made the discovery. About 2,000 feet above the riverbed, Kincaid noticed strange stains in the sedimentary rock formation. With great difficulty, he climbed the canyon wall to discover a small cave entrance with steps leading down into darkness. What Kincaid claimed to have found inside would make this one of the most valuable archaeological discoveries in the world. 100 feet inside, he found a cross-legged idol resembling Buddha, possibly of Tibetan origin, carved into the stone. Several hundred feet along a 12-foot-wide passageway, he discovered a crypt containing mummies lined against the walls. He stood one mummy upright and photographed it by flashlight, an image that, if it exists, has never been seen by the public. The chamber contained copper tools, gold and copper cups, enameled pottery, engraved yellow stones, and an unknown grey metal resembling platinum. Kincaid believed the hieroglyphics were of an Egyptian or Oriental type, linking the Grand Canyon directly to ancient Egypt. He estimated the caverns could comfortably accommodate more than 50,000 people, an underground city hidden in plain sight. The article claimed artifacts had been shipped to Washington, and the Smithsonian was carefully investigating the citadel. But when researchers contacted the Smithsonian in January 2000, the institution had no record of Professor Jordan, Kincaid, or any Egyptian civilization in Arizona. Intriguingly, there was a previous article from March 1909 also mentioning Kincaid, but it said nothing about staggering archaeological discoveries. After May 1909, there was complete silence on the story until it was rediscovered in 1993 by writer David Hatcher Childress in Nexus magazine. Since then, hundreds of websites have reprinted the story, but all of them trace back to a single anonymous newspaper article from 1909. Conspiracy theorists point to sealed caves in the canyon. Stanton's Cave is indeed locked behind a huge steel gate closed to the public. But the gate isn't hiding Egyptian treasure, it's protecting a colony of Townsend's big-eared bats from being disturbed by visitors. Another curiosity, many peaks in the canyon bear Egyptian and Oriental names: Isis Temple, Tower of Ra, Horus Temple, Osiris Temple. But the explanation is simple. In 1882, Captain Clarence Dutton of the US Army named these peaks, noting their resemblance to great architectural works. The story may have been inspired by Hopi Indian legends of ancestors who once lived in an underworld within the Grand Canyon. 19th-century explorers like John Wesley Powell, who described caves seating 50,000 people, likely provided further inspiration for the anonymous author. In that era, stories of lost lands like Atlantis were everywhere, and larger-than-life archaeologists like Heinrich Schliemann and Flinders Petrie made regular headlines. The article contains factual errors, referring to the Smithsonian Institute, a mistake no one familiar with the institution would make. It bears all the hallmarks of a newspaper hoax, much like the 1897 story of a UFO crash in Aurora, Texas, published in the Dallas Morning News. No photographs have ever surfaced, no artifacts have been catalogued, no independent evidence has been added to the original source since 1909. The Grand Canyon Egyptian treasure remains exactly what it was in 1909, a fascinating story but nothing more. But if one mystery crumbles under scrutiny, another only deepens, and it stands on the Giza Plateau in Egypt. The Great Pyramid at Giza, the oldest and only survivor of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Built around 2650 BC, this monument has stood for over 4,500 years, a symbol of ancient Egypt and the unknown itself. Originally rising to 478 feet, it was the tallest building on Earth until the 13th century, when Lincoln Cathedral's spire surpassed it. The area covered by the Great Pyramid could contain St. Peter's in Rome, the cathedrals of Florence and Milan, Westminster Abbey, and St. Paul's in London combined. The entrance is on the north face. Inside, 3 chambers are connected by descending and ascending passageways, a maze of ancient engineering. The lowest chamber, the unfinished chamber, was roughly carved into bedrock nearly 100 feet below ground level, then mysteriously abandoned. The Queen's Chamber, exactly midway between the north and south sides, has a rough unfinished floor, as if work was suddenly stopped for unknown reasons. At the heart of the pyramid lies the King's Chamber, built entirely of granite, with an empty sarcophagus that was never proven to hold any body at all. The sarcophagus is wider than the entrance to the chamber, meaning it had to be placed in position while the pyramid was still being built around it. The Grand Gallery is a stunning architectural achievement, 152 feet long, 28 feet high, with an ingenious corbelled vault formed by gradually projecting polished limestone walls. The mysterious shafts sloping upward from both the King's and Queen's chambers are astronomically aligned, likely connected to ancient Egyptian star worship. In 1990, Dr. Zahi Hawass discovered the tombs of the pyramid builders themselves, revealing that skilled workers, not slaves, built these monuments. Nearby, archaeologist Mark Lehner discovered a vast workers' village that housed as many as 20,000 people around 2500 BC. But how were stones weighing up to 40 tons transported and lifted? The leading theory involves massive ramps of mud, brick and rubble built on inclined planes. A newer theory suggests the blocks were literally rolled up ramps using purpose-made wooden rockers, like solid wheels, based on inscriptions saying this side up. Hidden in the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber, ancient graffiti reads Year 17 of Khufu's reign, linking the pyramid to the pharaoh. Robert Bauval proposed that the three pyramids mirror Orion's belt, with the Nile representing the Milky Way, a map of the heavens on the ground. In 1993, a robot crawled up the Queen's Chamber southern shaft, only to be stopped by a limestone door with copper handles. What lies beyond remains unknown. In 2003, another robot discovered a second door only 10 inches beyond the first, and the same arrangement in the northern shaft. The mystery multiplies. Whether the pyramid is a tomb, an observatory, or something else entirely, the builders succeeded in creating an enigma in stone that endures to this day. But just a short distance from the Great Pyramid stands an even older riddle, one carved not from blocks, but from the living rock of the Giza Plateau itself. The Great Sphinx of Giza, 241 feet long, 65 feet high, carved from a single knoll of limestone left behind by the pyramid builders. Traces of the original dark red paint can still be seen near one ear, a ghost of the monument's former glory. When Napoleon arrived in 1798, the Sphinx was already missing its nose, pried off centuries earlier by a Sufi who considered the statue a sacrilegious idol. Between its paws stands the dream stela, telling of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, who dreamt the Sphinx promised him the crown if he cleared away the engulfing sand. Buried for most of its life, the Sphinx was fully excavated only in the 1930s, exposed to the elements for perhaps the first time since antiquity. No inscriptions identify who built the Sphinx. A New York detective specializing in facial identification concluded it resembles Chephrun's brother Jedefra more than Chephrun himself. One of the strangest features, the head is out of proportion to the body, possibly recarved multiple times or originally a lion or ram's head reshaped into a human face. Geologist Robert Schoch noticed something startling. The Sphinx shows patterns of water erosion, not wind and sand erosion like every other structure on the plateau. Egypt today is arid, but 10,000 years ago it was wet and rainy. This means the Sphinx could be 7,000 to 9,000 years old, not just 4,500. Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock pushed the date back even further, to 10,500 BC, based on astronomical alignments with the constellation Orion. But orthodox Egyptologists reject this early date, pointing to Cairo's industrial pollution over the last century as a more likely cause of the unusual weathering patterns. In the 1940s, American psychic Edgar Cayce predicted a haul of records from Atlantis would be discovered beneath the Sphinx's paws, containing the lost wisdom of a super-civilization. Between 1991 and 1993, seismograph detected hollow, regularly shaped chambers below the ground between the Sphinx's paws, and at both sides, no further examination was allowed. In 1995, workers renovating a nearby parking lot uncovered tunnels and pathways plunging underground close to the Sphinx. Could Casey have been right? Today, the Sphinx is crumbling from wind, humidity, and Cairo's smog. Preservation efforts are ongoing, but exploration of its secrets has been put on indefinite hold. The Sphinx keeps its secrets, gazing east as it has for thousands of years, waiting for the day when its true age and purpose will finally be revealed. From monuments of stone to monuments of knowledge, our next mystery takes us to a library that held the accumulated wisdom of the entire ancient world. Founded by Alexander the Great in 330 BC, Alexandria became the greatest city in the ancient world, home to the Pharos Lighthouse and the most famous library in history. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy I took Egypt and made Alexandria his capital, transforming a small fishing village into an intellectual and cultural center. Around 295 BC, the scholar Demetrius of Phalerum convinced Ptolemy I to build the Temple of the Muses, the Museum, a shrine to the 9 muses that also functioned as a place of study with lecture halls, laboratories, observatories, botanical gardens, a zoo, and living quarters for scholars. Ptolemy II established the Royal Library to complement the museum, a universal library that aimed to house a copy of every book in the world. More than 100 scholars lived and worked within its walls, collecting manuscripts from Greece, Egypt, Assyria, Persia, and as far away as India. Buddhist texts and Hebrew scriptures along. Ptolemy III's hunger for knowledge was so great that he decreed all ships docking at the port must surrender their manuscripts. Official scribes copied them. The originals were filed away in the library, and only the copies were returned to their own. At its peak, the library may have held 500,000 scrolls, though the actual number of complete books would have been far fewer, since many scrolls were needed to make a single book. The collection grew so vast that a daughter library was established in the Temple of Serapis, serving those who couldn't access the main library in the royal palace quarter. The most famous suspect in the library's destruction is Julius Caesar. In 48 BC, trapped in the royal palace by the Egyptian fleet, Caesar ordered his men to set fire to the enemy ships. The flames spread to the parts of the city nearest the shore, including warehouses and depots near the port. Ancient sources claim 40,000 scrolls were destroyed. Roman writers Seneca and Plutarch both mention the fire, but modern scholars debate whether it was the Great Library itself or merely manuscripts stored near the port awaiting export that were destroyed. The scholar Strabo was working in Alexandria in 20 BC, 28 years after Caesar's fire, and his writings indicate that while the library may have diminished, it had clearly not been burned to the ground. The mystery deepens. In 391 AD, Emperor Theodosius I sanctioned the destruction of the Serapeum, the daughter library. Bishop Theophilus led the charge against pagan institutions, and a Christian church was built on the site. Some believe both the daughter library and the royal library itself were destroyed at this time, but no ancient sources actually mention the destruction of any library during this purge. The last suspect is Caliph Omar. According to a story written 300 years after the fact, the conquering Arabs used the library's scrolls as fuel for Alexandria's 4,000 bathhouses, keeping them heated for 6 months. The Caliph reportedly said, "If these writings agree with the Quran, they are useless. If they contradict it, they are heresy." The truth may be less dramatic but more tragic. Alexandria was repeatedly devastated by Caesar's fires, by Aurelian's battles with Queen Zenobia that turned the palace quarter into a desert, and by Diocletian's sack shortly after. The library likely died not in one great fire, but through centuries of neglect, repeated damage, and the slow erosion of support for pagan learning. The last recorded director of the Great Library was the scholar and mathematician Theon, father of the brilliant Hypatia, who was brutally murdered by a Christian mob in 415 AD. With her death, the spirit of the ancient library was truly extinguished. In 2004, a Polish-Egyptian archaeological team discovered 13 lecture halls with elevated central podiums in the Bruchion region, possibly the first physical remains of the ancient library complex ever found. Investigations continue, and many archaeologists believe the buildings that once composed this legendary seat of learning could still survive beneath the modern metropolis. In 2002, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina opened near the original site, a stunning modern library built to commemorate what was lost and to prove that the spirit of Alexandria's great library has not been extinguished after all. From lost knowledge to a lost city, our next mystery lies buried beneath the soil of Greece, a place some believe was the real inspiration for the legend of Atlantis. On the southern shore of the Gulf of Corinth, roughly 93 miles west of Athens, once stood the wealthy and powerful classical city of Helike. Helike's temple and sanctuary of Heliconian Poseidon was famous throughout the classical world, rivaled only by the oracle at Delphi across the Gulf. The city led the Achaean League and had established colonies as far as Asia Minor and southern Italy. One terrible night in the winter of 373 BC, something strange began. For 5 days, citizens watched in bewilderment as snakes, mice, martens, and other creatures fled from the coast, making for higher ground. The animals knew what was coming. Then it happened. A catastrophic earthquake, followed by a towering 32-foot tsunami wave. The coastal plain was submerged. As Helike collapsed, the great wave rushed in and dragged its buildings and its inhabitants out with the retreating waters. When a rescue party arrived the next morning, nothing remained of the once great city but the tops of the trees in Poseidon's sacred grove, peeping above the waves. The neighboring city of Bora and the temple of Apollo at Delphi were also destroyed. Survivors believed it was punishment from the angry sea god himself. For centuries after the disaster, ancient writers like Pliny, Ovid, and Pausanias reported that the submerged ruins of Helike could be glimpsed on the seafloor, including an upright bronze statue of Poseidon that often trapped the nets of fishermen in an inland lagoon. In 1861, German archaeologists obtained a bronze coin of Helike featuring Poseidon, but nothing else surfaced from the ancient site. For over a century, all searches beneath the sea failed. The city had vanished completely. In 2001, a breakthrough. Archaeologist Dora Katsonopoulou and Dr. Stephen Sota decided to stop searching beneath the sea and investigate the coastal plain instead. Just a few feet beneath the mud and gravel, they found classical building ruins. Helike had been hiding not under the sea, but almost half a mile inland, buried beneath an ancient lagoon that had silted up over centuries. One wall had collapsed in a seaward direction, clear evidence of destruction by the backwash of a giant wave, exactly as the ancient accounts described. Among the demolished walls, pottery fragments and terracotta idols, They found a mint silver coin with Apollo wearing a laurel wreath, cast just a few decades before the earthquake struck. Many believe the destruction of Helike was the real inspiration for Plato's legend of Atlantis, recorded just a few years after the Helike earthquake in 360 BC. Both were advanced civilizations destroyed in a single day and night by earthquake and flood. Both vanished beneath the sea. The parallels are striking. The area remains one of the most seismically active in Europe. In June 1995, while the Helike project team was working there, a 6.2 earthquake struck, killing 26 people. Locals reported bizarre events before the quake. Subterranean explosions, strange lights in the sky, fireballs, dogs howling, and dead mice on the roads, fleeing for the mountains just as animals had done 2,400 years earlier. History was repeating itself in the most unsettling way. These accounts echo what happened in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. In Sri Lanka's Yala National Park, tens of thousands of people died, yet no dead animals were found. They had sensed the danger and fled to higher ground. Experts believe animals possess a sixth sense for natural disasters, an ability that was documented at Helike nearly 2,400 years ago. But Helike now faces a new threat. The Greek National Railway is building a new line from Athens to Patras, and its current route runs right through the center of the ancient site. The World Monuments Fund has placed Helike on its list of 100 most endangered sites. Unless it is protected as an archaeological zone, the lost city may be lost all over again, this time to modern development rather than an ancient earthquake. The late archaeologist Spyridon Marinatos once speculated that hordes of bronze and marble classical sculptures could lie entombed in the ruins, an ancient Pompeii waiting to be uncovered on the Greek coast. The Helike project continues its work, hoping to reach the heart of the ancient city before time runs out. Helike is a reminder that ancient mysteries are not just about the past. They are living stories, still unfolding beneath our feet, waiting to be rediscovered. Our final mystery takes us to the island of Crete, where a palace of bewildering complexity may be the origin of one of the most terrifying myths ever told, the Minotaur and its labyrinth. The palace of Knossos on the island of Crete, a vast complex covering over 200,000 square feet, constructed by the Bronze Age Minoan civilization, which flourished for 1,500 years from 2600 to 1100 BC. The Minoans were named for the legendary king Minos, and at their peak they were the most advanced civilization in Europe. The walls of Knossos were adorned with extraordinary frescoes, princes, courtly ladies, fish, flowers, and young people leaping over charging bulls in strange and dangerous games. These paintings, though fragmentary when found and controversially reconstructed by Arthur Evans and his artist, offer a window into a world of stunning sophistication. The East Wing once had 4 levels, 3 remain today, featuring the grand staircase, residential quarters, workshops, shrines, and what may be the first flush toilets in history, served by running water in terracotta pipes. At its peak, the city of Knossos and its surrounding settlement had a population of perhaps 100,000 people. The throne room, with its stone seat built into the wall facing a row of benches, was interpreted by Evans as a royal throne, though some archaeologists believe it may have served a religious purpose. The palace functioned as an administrative and religious center, with perhaps as many as 1,400 rooms connected by a dizzying network of corridors and staircases. It is this bewildering complexity that connects Knossos to one of the most enduring myths of the ancient world, the story of Theseus, Ariadne, and the Minotaur in its labyrinth. The palace layout is so intricate that some believe it directly inspired the legend of the labyrinth built by Daedalus to contain the terrible half-bull, half-man monster. The myth begins in Athens, where King Minos of Crete demands a terrible blood payment. Every 7 years, 7 young Athenian men and 7 virgin girls must be sent to Crete, where they are given to the Minotaur, a beast kept shut within the inescapable labyrinth designed by the master craftsman Daedalus. Appalled, the hero Theseus volunteers to be part of the sacrifice and kill the monster. When the group arrives at Knossos, King Minos' daughter Ariadne falls in love with Theseus and gives him a silk thread to trace his path through the labyrinth. Theseus enters the darkness, the thread his only lifeline. At the center, he finds the Minotaur and slays it, then follows the thread back to freedom and sails for Athens with Ariadne, though he will later abandon her on the island of Naxos, where the god Dionysus finds and rescues her. The link between Knossos and the Minotaur myth was kept alive long after the Minoans vanished. A silver coin from Knossos minted around 500 BC depicts a running Minotaur on one side and a labyrinth on the reverse. Roman mosaics across the empire continued to illustrate the Knossos labyrinth for centuries, including a spectacular 5th century AD mosaic from a villa near Salzburg, Austria. But there is a darker side to this myth. In 1979, in the basement of the North House at Knossos, excavators discovered 337 human bones, representing at least 4 children. Analysis revealed a horrifying detail. 79 of the bones showed cut marks made by a fine blade, interpreted by specialists as evidence that the flesh had been removed. Professor Peter Warren of the University of Bristol concluded the children were probably ritually sacrificed and then eaten. At the Animaspilia temple, just 4 miles from Knossos, archaeologists found a scene frozen in time. An 18-year-old male lay on an altar with a bronze dagger at his chest and his feet bound. A blood channel around a pillar base suggested ritual sacrifice. A woman and a tall man, his hands raised in self-defense, legs crushed by falling masonry, had been killed when the temple collapsed during an earthquake around 1600 BC. The teenager was already dead before the building fell. These sacrifices were of young adults and children, bringing to mind the 7 young men and 7 young women sent by Athens to satisfy the Minotaur. Human sacrifice does not seem to have been widespread on Minoan Crete. These may have been desperate exceptions, attempts to appease the gods in times of violent earthquakes, when the safety of the entire community was thought to be at risk. Perhaps this is where the darkest part of the Labyrinth legend was born. Some researchers distinguish between a labyrinth, which has a single path to the center, and a maze, which has many. The Knossos labyrinth may ultimately be more than architecture. It is a symbol, the Minotaur at its center representing something concealed in the heart of all of us, our deepest fears, our darkest impulses, and the thin thread of hope that guides us back to the light. The Palace of Knossos endured earthquakes, invasions, and the collapse of Minoan civilization in the mid-15th century BC. But its labyrinth of myth and memory has proven far more durable than its stones. 6 ancient mysteries. 6 puzzles that span continents and millennia. What have we learned from this journey through the unknown? The Grand Canyon Egyptian treasure is almost certainly a newspaper hoax, inspired by real explorers, Indian legends, and the exotic place names of the canyon itself. The Great Pyramid remains a staggering engineering achievement whose construction methods we still debate, and the Sphinx may be far older than the history books claim. The Library of Alexandria died not in one great fire but through centuries of neglect, yet its spirit has been reborn in the modern Bibliotheca Alexandrina. Helike proves that lost cities can be found, and reminds us that ancient myths sometimes conceal real tragedies beneath their legendary surfaces. And Knossos shows us that even the most fantastical myths, the Minotaur, the Labyrinth, the hero's thread, may grow from real soil watered by genuine human fear and real blood spilled on ancient altars. These mysteries endure because they speak to something fundamental in us, our need to believe that the past holds secrets we have not yet uncovered. We are drawn to what we cannot explain, because mystery is the beginning of wonder, and wonder is the beginning of understanding. If you enjoyed this journey through the ancient world's greatest mysteries, subscribe and hit the bell to join us on our next exploration into the unknown. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, and never stop exploring.